It's my pleasure to welcome you here this evening on behalf of the EY Hindu Network and Veda London. My name is Bijal Majithia and I work here at EY in Global Diversity and Inclusiveness. And it's also my honor to lead the Hindu Network. The Hindu Network hosts a wide range of dynamic events to showcase the Vedic philosophy through exploration of ancient wisdom and philosophy, presentation of arts and culture, and self-development seminars. Our events come together with support from Veda London, bringing together a wide range of people from across the city. The aim of our network is to support EY's diversity and inclusiveness agenda, which celebrates the fact that our differences matter and we should come together to nurture them to build a better working world. For those of you who are active on social media this evening, you can see the handles and hashtags on the screen. The secret of attaining happiness has been pursued since the dawn of man, and yet this secret still eludes us today. Have you ever noticed that we're always chasing something, be it a new car, a promotion, or a significant other? And this leads to the belief that when X, Y, or Z happens, we'll finally be happy. While these major life events may make us happy for a period of time, research has shown that this happiness doesn't last. A study from Northwestern University measured the happiness levels of two groups. One group, who were a regular group, and a second group, who had recently won large lottery prizes the year prior. The researchers were surprised to find that the happiness ratings of the two groups were practically identical. The mistaken notion that life events dictate your happiness and sadness is so prevalent that psychologists have named it impact bias. However, the reality is that event-based happiness is fleeting, and it doesn't give us the fulfillment that we actually desire. So, what does lasting happiness mean, and where does it come from? Here to shed some light, we're honored to have with us His Holiness Bhakti Charu Swami, a renounced monk and traveling teacher of over 40 years. Born in Bengal in 1945, he left India to travel to Germany where he studied chemistry. Whilst in Germany, he came across the Vedic literatures and discovered that their richness was so great that he decided to return to India to wholeheartedly pursue spiritual life. He's now renowned all over the world for his depth of spiritual knowledge and practice, and we're very fortunate to have him speaking with us this evening. So please join me in welcoming His Holiness.
Hare Krishna. Good evening, everybody. We start our programs with a short prayer to our spiritual master and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So I'll start off with that. Om Ajnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitan Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vashadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So, it's a very interesting topic that I have to discuss about tonight. Happiness and how to, first of all, what it is and how to achieve it. First, I will discuss about what happiness literally means. I will source these concepts from the Vedas. The Vedas are the books of wisdom. The word Veda, it's a Sanskrit word, and usually all Sanskrit words stem from a specific root. So this word Veda originates from the root vid, which means to know, and Veda means knowledge. So Vedas are actually dealing with the entire domain of knowledge, not only material but spiritual as well. So Vedas give various definitions of the word happiness according to its different level. The first consideration of happiness is cessation of pain. We are in a painful situation, and when that painful situation is removed or eradicated, that is considered to be happiness. And the cause of happiness is basically fulfillment of desire. We want something, we desire something, and when we get it, we feel happy. Then it goes to the extent of pointing out that happiness is a matter of gratifying our senses. Our senses are craving for certain gratification or desire, and when that it is gratified, the senses are satisfied, we call it happiness. And then in this way, gradually it comes to the understanding that, okay, here I will use the Sanskrit expression to clarify the point. There are two expressions. One is sukh in Sanskrit, which indicates happiness. And another expression is anandam. So ananda is not quite similar to happiness, but ananda is diametrically opposed to suffering. Like if we consider that happiness is cessation of pain, eradication of pain, we are in a painful situation. When that pain is removed for the time being, we call it happiness. Now, if there is a diametrically opposed consideration to pain, is anandam, which has been defined as permanent removal of suffering condition. In Sanskrit it is called attantik dukkha nibritti. Attantik means total. Dukkha means suffering, and nibritti means removal, cessation, total cessation. Like, okay, here graphically maybe we can point out through this example. Like if we consider suffering is darkness, then by lighting a lamp, when we remove that darkness, that can be compared to happiness. But the lamp, that darkness will be removed only as long as the lamp will be lit. When the lamp is extinguished, then again the darkness will prevail. Now, if you go out into broad daylight, if the sun comes up, is there any possibility of darkness? No. The darkness is immediately removed. So here is the thing, like happiness is removal of darkness with a lamp. Therefore it is temporary. It lasts only for a short while. Because at some point the lamp will be extinguished. But to be in broad daylight when there is no possibility of darkness, that situation is considered to be anandam. So am I clear up to this point? The temporary removal of suffering is happiness. But the permanent removal of suffering is anandam. Now the main consideration, according to the Vedas, is to become situated in that anandam. Now how it can be achieved? So that has been presented very systematically in the Vedas through different branches of philosophy. This entire subject matter is dealt with 6 branches of philosophy, gradually elevating from one to the other. And they have been divided into 3 factors. The first consideration is action-reaction principle, which is called Karmakanda section of the Vedas. Then the second consideration is called Jnanakanda, or the knowledge aspect. And the third consideration is loving relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Although God is there, and irrespective of our accepting or not, He will be there, but still the Vedas are making a very scientific and systematic approach towards that. Like Vedas are not saying that accept it because I am telling you, but Vedas are saying use your intelligence, use your reasoning mind to recognize who He is. So that is what I'll try to present here. In this respect, I also want to mention, like it so happened this morning, I received an email. Somebody sent me an email from giving some reports from the Guardian. And that actually said that from the census of 2014, it shows that 48.5% of UK population don't have any religion. The census of 2011 showed 25% did not have religion or consider that they didn't have any religious conviction or allegiance. Now in 3 years it rose from 25 to 48.5. 23.5% increase in just 3 years. And I was thinking that I'm not surprised, because today what's going on in the name of religion is not going to appeal to any intelligent mind. Because it is totally unscientific. Just based on... Anyway, let's not get into that. The point that I'm making is that today's individuals want to accept things based on rational, reasonable understanding. And in that respect, I want to point out that religion in real sense is not a faith. Religion is actually science. If science is a systematic study of any subject, if science is an experimentally verified facts, then religion is a science which is scientifically, systematically accepting or entering into another domain that is beyond this material nature. There is another reality beyond this material nature, that is the spiritual reality. It is there. Although it is not perceivable by our senses, but it is there beyond our sense perception. Because we cannot see or perceive that reality, it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. And Vedas are actually systematically taking us to that domain. And so that's what I'm going to present here today. So as I mentioned, there are 3 aspects. Those 3 aspects are dealing or analyzed or systematically presented through 6 branches of philosophy. The first aspect is called karma kanda. Karma kanda is simply, karma means action. And the understanding is the action generates reaction. I mean, in that respect, we can even consider the law of motion. To every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. Or, in simple words, as you sow, so shall you reap. Things that happen to us is not just some accidental happening. Whatever is happening to us is a result of our past actions. As we have acted in the past, accordingly we are going to get the reactions. And the understanding in this Karmakanda section is that right actions will lead to happiness, and wrong actions will lead to suffering. In our day-to-day life also we can see a person who prepares himself nicely, he has a bright future. But a person who squanders his time ends up becoming miserable. So this is the basic consideration. And Vedas in the Karmakanda section is starting with the thing that everybody wants to enjoy. But one must know how to enjoy. Because wrong action is not lead to enjoyment but to suffering. For example, one may think that if he gets a lot of money, he'll be able to enjoy. And he robs a bank and gets the money. But instead of enjoying, he ends up in the prison. So this money, acquiring that money did not lead him to enjoyment, but to suffering. So, this is how it is coming to this consideration of piety and sin. The right action is called piety or pious activities, and wrong actions are considered to be sin. So when one acts in a pious way, he creates a rewarding future. And when one acts in a wrong way, he ends up suffering. And if it is a matter of fulfilling our desires to enjoy or to become happy, the Vedas are giving all kinds of prescriptions. Okay, you want to become rich? Act in this way, you'll become rich. Then one feels that, well, this is not enough. I want to become a king. Of course, in democratic world, there is no possibility of that. But Vedas are saying, okay, if you act in this way, you can become a king. Still, he is not happy. He thinks, now I want to become the king of the entire earth planet. And it goes on. So Vedas are giving the means how to fulfill one's desires, no matter whatever it is. And in this way, one goes through his life, and eventually he realizes that in spite of all my endeavor to enjoy, I'm suffering. So the natural quest is, why am I suffering? So that is actually taking from Karmakanda section, or the consideration of action, reaction, is taking him into the platform of Jnana Kanda, or knowledge. Why am I suffering? So this is taking him to the next branch of philosophy called Nyaya. Incidentally, the first branch of philosophy that is dealing with this action-reaction consideration is called Purva Mimamsa, or preliminary conclusion. The preliminary conclusion of this branch, or the conclusion of this preliminary branch of philosophy, is right action leads to enjoyment and wrong actions will lead to suffering. But then eventually one realizes that in spite of all my endeavor for enjoyment, I am suffering. So it's a very interesting aspect here. And this is taking to a branch of philosophy called Nyaya. Nyaya means logic or reasoning. Why am I suffering? And it is leading to the conclusion that this is a place for suffering, and this body is an instrument for receiving pain. Like, I know it's a kind of a shocking statement, but let us consider whether this consideration is valid or not. Take any part of your body, say the little finger, and consider in how many different ways you can inflict pain to this little finger. You can take a knife, cut it. You can take some fire, burn it. You can take stone and smash it. There's so many ways you can inflict pain to this little finger. Now you consider in how many ways you can give pleasure to this little finger. And I tell you, this applies to every single part of our body. And what we are actually struggling all the time is to avoid that painful situation. Our intelligence is helping us. That's what the intelligence is doing. That don't get into that situation because it will lead to suffering. So we are in a world of suffering and in a body which is meant to receive pain, and we are constantly struggling to avoid that suffering condition. But no matter how much we try, we cannot really avoid the suffering. Everybody wants to be happy. Everybody wants to enjoy. And nobody wants suffering. But still it comes, uninvited. It comes. It's unavoidable. So, then it is taking to the next consideration, next branch of philosophy, called Vaisheshika, which is leading to the atomic theory. The question is then, what is this world where we are in? And the conclusion is, this world is a combination of the minutest particles called paramanu, which can be translated into English as atoms. But this concept of paramanu is even more subtle than atom. Anyway, let's not get into that. Let's consider that this visible, perceivable reality is nothing but combination of atoms. And then it is taking to the next branch of philosophy called Sankhya, or analytical study. Let us analyze this world. Where we are in, and what is this reality? So that is taking to the consideration. There are 5 elements with which this material nature is composed of in a gross way. The gross reality is consisting of earth, water, fire, air, and ether. In simple words, solid, liquid, fiery, aerial, and ethereal substances. And we have 5 senses: eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and skin. The ears interact with ether, sound is produced. Skin interacts with air, touch is produced. Fire, or rather eyes, interacts with fire, form is produced. Tongue interacts with water, taste is produced. And nose interacts with earth, and smell is produced. So this is how, due to the interaction between the 5 senses and the 5 elements of this nature, 5 objects of the senses are generated: sound, touch, form, taste, and smell. Then they consider that there are 5 working senses with which we become active in this world. Those 5 working senses are speech, hands, anus, belly, and genitals. So with these 5 working senses, one becomes active in this nature. Then they consider there are 3 subtle elements beyond this. They are mind, intelligence, and false ego. In Sanskrit, they are man, buddhi, and ahankar. These are just, I am giving the English translation of these expressions. It sometimes may become a little confusing. What is false ego? Like, it is a substance which actually makes us identify ourselves with the body. False ego literally means mistaken identity. My actual identity is something else, but I am identifying myself with this body. That's the false ego. So 20 plus 3, 23. Then they consider the Mahat Tattva, which is the basic ingredients with which the entire creation, entire material nature has been composed of. So in this way, through this 24 consideration, they analyze the entire material nature. But they didn't stop at that. They consider that all these 24 are in objective reality. But the objects cannot exist without the subject. So who is the subject? I am the subject. Our eyes are the subject. I am here, therefore, this reality is here. You are here, therefore, to you, this reality is here. Now, see, with this 24 consideration, the entire material nature has been analyzed, but the I couldn't be found. Therefore, I is beyond this material nature. So in this way, they are actually transcending the material nature and coming to a non-material or anti-material or spiritual reality. So that's why we're saying this entire approach is extremely scientific. It is not just a matter of some faith. So then they consider, so this is how they're transcending the material nature with the 25th consideration, that is I, and that is the spiritual entity that I am, and that is the soul. So this is how they are establishing the identity of an individual being spiritual or spirit soul. Now everybody has his soul. You have your soul, I have my soul. We all are spiritual entities with our souls. Now, in this way, we can see that the souls are minute and many. So anything that is minute and many must have its source. So the source of all souls is the Supreme Soul, from whom all the souls, all of us, have come. And that Supreme Soul is identified as God. So, in this way, through the 25th and 26th consideration, they transcend the material nature, enter into the spiritual domain, establishing the existence of an individual soul or a spirit soul and the Supreme Soul or God. So then it takes to the next branch of philosophy, the 5th branch of philosophy, called yoga. The word yoga literally means to link, to be linked up, to be connected. Yoga. So the consideration is that if we are parts of the Supreme Soul or God, then what is our relationship with Him? For example, this little finger is a part of my body. Now, as long as this finger is connected to the body, it has a lot of relevance, a lot of value, a lot of utility. But the moment it is severed from this body, it doesn't have any utility. So similarly, our existence as a part lies in our connection to the soul, to the whole. So how that connection can be established? So that is taking us to the next branch of philosophy called yoga, and it has 8 different steps or levels. Therefore it's called Ashtanga yoga. Those 8-limbed yoga. The first aspect is we are separated from Him due to our impurities, or due to our becoming separated from Him, we have become impure. So how to purify ourselves? And that is considered as the first aspect called yama, or external purification. This external purification is not only just taking bath and wearing clean clothes. The external purification also considers what we eat. Because what we eat, that becomes our body. If we eat wrong stuff, then we'll have a wrong kind of body. Therefore, we have to know how to eat right. So, and this is just one aspect of the jama stage. Then niyama, the internal purification, the purification of the mind, the internal purification of our subtle body. And then the third aspect is asana, meaning sitting. Like body is a vehicle, a wonderful vehicle that can take us to our ultimate destination. Now, in order to drive this vehicle, in order to properly utilize this vehicle, first thing we have to do is know how to sit and where to sit. So that is that consideration. And in today's world, what goes on in the name of yoga is actually this third aspect, asana aspect. Just like this body, functioning of the body has a lot to do with our nervous system. And eventually the nervous system leads to the brain. Brain actually is the seat of the mind. So this is the basic aspect of asana. Then pranayama, breathing control. Because our mind, our thoughts have a very close connection with our breathing. Like when we are excited, how do we breathe? Breathe very quickly. And when you are peaceful, how do we breathe? So this aspect of pranayama is the process of controlling the breathing. And breathing consists of three functions. Breathing is not just a matter of inhaling and exhaling. The third aspect of breathing, which is the most important aspect of breathing, according to the yoga, is called kumbhaka. Rechaka means filling the lungs or filling the body with the air. Puraka is the filling. Rechaka is exhaling, inhaling, exhaling, and kumbhaka is the retaining aspect of the Vedas, of pranayama. And a yogi actually controls the breathing to such a way that he practically stops breathing. Recently, there was a Kumbh Mela in Ujjain. Kumbh Mela is a big religious fair that takes place in India. And there was one person, his name is Pilot Baba. That person used to be a pilot before, and he became a yogi. And he was demonstrating of stopping to breathe for 3 to 4 hours. He was being put into a trunk and he was buried underground, and after some hours he came out. And not only him, one of his Japanese lady disciples was also demonstrating the same thing. So this is how, through the pranayama process, one can actually stop breathing for hours together. That's what the yogis do. And in this way, after the 4th stage of pranayama, one comes to a 5th stage called pratyahar, or withdrawal of the senses from the objects of the senses. Our senses are dragging our consciousness externally. Eyes see, we become attracted. Ears hear sound, we become attracted. In this way, we are constantly being attracted towards the external nature. But the purpose of yoga is to meditate or internally project oneself, one's consciousness. And so, in this way, after this withdrawal of the senses, one becomes eligible to meditate or project his consciousness internally to the core of the heart, where along with our soul, the Supreme Soul or the Supreme Personality of Godhead is residing. The Lord is there in everyone's heart. And through this process of meditation, after due qualification, one reaches this sixth stage called dhyan or meditation, after withdrawing his senses from its external projection. And then, when the meditation becomes fixed, that is the seventh stage known as dharana. And then when he perceives the Lord in the heart, that is the stage of samadhi or trance. When he sees the Lord in the heart, then he is completely withdrawn from this external reality, and he is there with him in the spiritual reality. So at that stage, when the soul, a living entity, perceives the Lord, who is the Supreme, a minute comes across the Absolute. Naturally, his head bends down with respect and he surrenders to him. So this surrender is taking to the next branch or the final branch of philosophy called the final conclusion, Uttar Mimamsa. And this Uttar Mimamsa is establishing that when a living entity spontaneously surrenders himself to the Lord picks him up in his loving embrace. And a loving relationship develops between the Lord and his eternal part and parcel. The loving relationship develops between the Father and the Son. And that loving relationship is the source of joy, as I was telling, which is termed in Sanskrit as Anandam. So in this way, the Vedas are actually taking us from the temporary situation of cessation of pain, which is called happiness, to the ultimate point of removal of suffering condition completely, and become situated in a state of existence which is diametrically opposed to suffering condition. That is Anandam, or in Sanskrit, in English it can be termed as bliss or ecstasy. So, Vedas are pointing out the goal of human form of life is to reach that stage. The human form comes with a very special opportunity. The human beings have been endowed with an inconceivable ability to expand his consciousness to an unlimited extent. Human beings are not only most advanced or most developed, most intelligent and most conscious individuals, but they have the ability to expand their consciousness. And this is the way one expands his consciousness to become connected to the supreme source of consciousness. Through that loving exchange, he becomes situated in a state that he is always hankering for. And that state is the state of bliss or state of ananda. So thank you all very much, and if anybody has any question, please feel free to ask.
The process that you've just described, like
right.
the 25 stages, or the what make up how to achieve happiness, it seems like quite a complex process. So how would one make his first steps on that journey?
Wonderful, very nice, thank you. You see, to approach any process or any subject, we need a teacher. So the first consideration is actually to come across a qualified teacher who can guide through this process. Like, what subject did you master? What did you study? Finance. So what did you do in order to learn the subject? And study under the guidance of a qualified teacher, right? The books were there, but just the books are not enough. To reveal the books, there is a need for a teacher. Similarly, just as to study, to learn something, you have to go to a school or get a teacher. Similarly, to enter into this topic or enter into this realm, the first consideration is actually get a teacher. So one has to find the right teacher and study or practice the process under his guidance, and it works. For example, today I am here speaking about certain subject. I think it was mentioned in while introducing me. She mentioned that I was in Germany and I went back to India. Actually, it's not that in Germany I came across the Vedic literatures. When I was in Germany, I realized how little I knew about my own culture. And I started to study. I got the books sent from India and I started to study. And that study actually led me to the understanding that I need a teacher. So I went back to India in search of a teacher. And after an extensive search, I came across a teacher. It's not that, although when I went back to India, I thought, or before I went back to India, I was thinking that as soon as I go to India, I'll find my teacher, I'll find my guru, and he will show me the way. But when I went there, I found it extremely disappointing. And practically after 1 year of search, when I practically gave up the search, I came across a book. And by reading that book, I realized the person who wrote the book, he is my guru. I didn't meet him personally at that time, just by reading that book. And also when I accepted the process, I thought that, I'll give it a try I'll try it for 2 months. And if I don't like, I can go back. Because I had to shave my head at that time. And I thought that if I don't like it, then in 2 months' time my hair will grow and I can go back. And the 2 months didn't end even after 40 years. So the point is to enter into this domain, we need a guide, we need a teacher. Does it answer your question? And he will lead you. He'll lead you, and you can rest assured that, that the right kind of teacher can show you the way. Yes, yes. I had the good fortune of being in very close contact with him. I actually came across him at a time when he had more than 10,000 followers. And each one of them would give anything to just have a moment's association. And at that time I had the good fortune of, like he allowed me to stay with him practically 24 hours a day till he left this planet. I was his secretary. I used to cook for him. He taught me how to cook. And so, yes, I had the good fortune of his association.
Maharaj, you've given a nice explanation about finding a teacher. I have a slight contention with this. I'm not convinced that perhaps all of us in this room will perhaps necessarily have either the impetus or burning desire to find a teacher here and now. What I am sure of is everybody in this room wants to get more happiness, less stress, and more peace. So is there anything in the meantime more practical and pragmatic that we can start doing, lending from those 6 processes that we can start doing at home perhaps?
It comes back to the same point actually. That is, somebody who knows the way has to come and show them. If I come to London and I have to go to, say Abbey Road, like on my own, if I have to find a place, it will be very, very difficult. But if I get into a taxi and tell him that that's where I want to go, who knows the way, he can just drive me straight there. So that is the difference. If I want to find the way myself, it'll be very difficult, very arduous. But if I find somebody who knows the way, and I just submit to him and tell me, can you please show me the way? That's the easiest way. So teacher is a person who knows the way. Like, say for example, he was telling he studied finance. So he studied finance under the guidance of somebody who knew the subject. And that's why it became easy for you to understand, right? Like if you had to buy some books on finance and study and master the subject yourself, could it be possible? No? So as you were saying, everybody is hankering for happiness, right? It's true, like everybody is aspiring for happiness. And now the question is how to find it. And my answer is, find somebody who is really happy. And he will show you the way how to become happy.
Namaste Swamiji, thank you very much for the very insightful discussion. Firstly, right, many of us are very similar, given that we're based in London. All of us, I think, predominantly young professionals. If you had to think of one thing, and many of us remain unfulfilled, I think, maybe I'm just speaking for myself, but what do you think the one thing is that we are doing wrong? Are we too focused on money, career progress? Are we losing the plot completely? And furthermore, achieving complete happiness, or how did you phrase it, the end of suffering or no suffering, are we, is it ever possible for us, or are we required to follow a 100% very involved spiritual path? Is there a balance for us, as professionals? Or, I mean, we could find a teacher, but if we don't adopt a 100% sort of spiritual path, is it ever possible for us to achieve self-realization and, all of these spiritual goals?
When you were a little child, did you have any anxiety? Did you have any stress? Did you have any difficulty as a child?
Is this specific to me or a general question?
A general question, I can say.
Okay.
I mean, as a child, well, it was in a way a personal question, but meant to be a general thing. The reality, what actually I was trying to say, when we were young, we didn't really have any anxiety because the parents were there. We knew that they're there, they're going to take care of all my needs and but the trouble starts when we grow up. When we have to fend for ourselves. When we have to deal with all the difficulties that is surrounding us. And that leads us to a very, very stressful situation. But if we can become like a child, finding a father who is not only there, but who actually owns everything, and he knows everything, and he controls everything. And if we submit ourselves to him, at least I can tell you that we can become completely free from all anxiety. And that is God. Like that's why first I tried to establish his existence and his identity in a systematic way. Like he is there. Although we may not be able to see him, but he is there. And there is one faculty that can enable us to perceive him or appreciate his existence. Like, just consider the food that we are eating. Where is it coming from? A seed of an apple falls on the ground, turns into a tree. In that tree, there are innumerable apples. In those apples, there are innumerable seeds. In those seeds, there are the possibilities, or in the seeds, there are trees. In those trees, there are innumerable fruits. In those fruits, there are innumerable seeds. Now tell me, is it an accidental phenomena or is it somebody's arrangement? What will be an intelligent consideration for that? Well, you are not sure because you never probed into it. But just use your common sense. You are an intelligent person. Can this be an accidental phenomena?
So the question is, why are they innumerable or infinite? Why is there an infinite amount of fruit from the tree?
Well, I just asked a very simple question, right? A seed falls on the ground and a tree comes up.
Yeah. Well, that's
right.
Nature, right? Or,
yeah. Right. But is nature just some haphazard accidental happening, or nature is being controlled by somebody?
By God, presumably.
Okay,
yes.
That's it. Okay, thanks. Okay. More important than food is actually water. And about 3/4 of this planet is water. But that water is unusable, undrinkable, unpotable. But sun makes that water to evaporate. And it forms the cloud. And the wind disperses it all over. And then that distilled water comes down in the form of raindrops and fills up all the water bodies. Now tell me, who made that arrangement?
Of course, God, again.
Okay. Even more important than water is oxygen for us. We are taking oxygen, giving out carbon dioxide. If that process continued, then the whole atmosphere would have been filled with carbon dioxide. But did it ever happen? No. Trees and plants are taking the carbon dioxide and giving back the oxygen to us. So tell me, who made that arrangement? Okay. We are on a planet which is spherical. The earth is round. We are situated on the surface of the earth. If there is some object on the surface of on top of a round thing, And if that round thing moved, then what would have happened? That object would have fallen off. So now we are on the surface of the earth. Earth is round and earth is moving at a speed of about 1,000 kilometers an hour. Now what would have happened to us? What should have happened to us? We should have been deflected into the space in no time. But did it ever happen? Did anyone ever got deflected in that way? No. Why? We may call it gravitational pull, but the question is, who created that gravity? And consider, the earth is moving at a tremendous speed, and we all are situated on the surface of the earth. If the earth stopped even for a fraction of a moment, what would have happened? The whole creation would have been destroyed in no time. Did it ever happen? No. Now, is somebody controlling it? Is somebody behind that arrangement who very systematically, in an inconceivable way, made these arrangements for us? Now, to consider that this is all accidental phenomena, it's all some accidental happening. In that respect, I remember one American philosopher, most really it was Will Durant. He mentioned that the concept that creation happened as an accident and the maintenance of this arrangement is an accidental phenomena sounds as absurd as telling that there was an explosion in a printing press and the way the types fell, the Webster Dictionary got printed.
Yes. Have you yourself reached that state? And if that's the case, do you ever suffer from anything?
Very good question, actually. Suffering is unavoidable. Every one of us here are suffering. We cannot avoid it. But there is a situation when the suffering becomes irrelevant. Suffering condition becomes irrelevant. In the sense, when you realize that the suffering is pertaining to the body, and you are not this body, then the suffering doesn't really affect you. Or even if you do not come to that stage of recognizing that you are not this body, but even this awareness, the understanding that you are not this body, then the suffering condition of the body becomes less painful. That you realize, well, it's happening to the body, what can be done? So just tolerate it. So, from that stage of, awareness and leading to tolerance to the suffering condition, to come to the absolute situation when this suffering doesn't at all matter. And I can give an example in that respect. A person is having heart surgery. His heart is cut open, his ribs are cut open, and sort of. But does he feel the pain at that time? No. Why? Because of the anesthetics. What does the anesthetics do? Anesthetics actually flows the nerve current. You don't register you see, our perceptions are due to the flow of nerve currents to the brain. So when there is no current flowing into the brain, you don't really perceive the suffering condition. Although can you imagine, heart is cut, the chest is cut open and it's kind of, priced up, like it's opened up, and with machines and, heart is taken out. But the person is not experiencing it because of the anesthetics that caused his consciousness not to flow through the body. So, in a similar way, this is an artificial way of doing it. But there is a practical way of doing that. When the senses are withdrawn from the body, then what happens to the body doesn't really matter. Or you don't perceive it at all because your consciousness is withdrawn from the body. And that is what, our loving relationship with the Lord, which is called the devotion to the Lord, does. The consciousness is withdrawn from the body and projected onto Him, who is the source of all consciousness. So at that stage, whatever happens to the body becomes irrelevant.
Within our current society today, mental health is an epidemic, especially in the UK. Would it be right to simplify what you said into a systematic process of achieving happiness through, about what we eat, is it about controlling our breathing, doing yoga every day, and Modi started yoga day in India, which is fantastic. Is that the way forward, especially in society where children are actually suffering from
Yeah.
anxiety? So can we simplify that?
Very, very good. Like, that's why I can say that I am here today. Because I found something which I benefited from. And I feel that it is my responsibility to make others aware of it so that they can also benefit from that. That is the only purpose or only objective that we have here. Like, here is something that we found, so why don't you consider whether it's worth its while? And it is not that for my benefit I am trying to give it to others, but for their own benefit. And again, we go back to the point, education. Teacher gives the students the knowledge, and by being enriched with that knowledge, the student also becomes qualified to become a teacher in due course of time. So we hope that this understanding will be recognized and accepted and distributed.
One question. What was the book that you followed?
What is the?
The book that you mentioned earlier.
Well, as I mentioned, the Vedas is but the Vedas are vast. As I said, like, Vedas literally means knowledge. So all the knowledge in totality is actually Veda. So it's a very, it's taking, as I was pointing out, from material platform it is systematically taking us to the spiritual reality. And all the informations, like material as well as spiritual, are available in the Vedas. Say, for example, the Vedas have one branch called Ayurveda, which is actually the medical science. And I can tell you it's the most advanced medical science. Similarly, there is, the Veda of music called Gandharva Veda, music of dance, music of, the science of or knowledge of drama. The knowledge of, planetary influences on others known as astrology or Jyotir Veda and so forth. Now, the Vedas, the essence of the Vedas are flowing in two streams. One is called Upanishad and the other is called Puran. And out of these two streams, the Upanishad streams, the essence is Bhagavad Gita, where the Lord Himself spoke about the absolute knowledge. he is establishing our identity being spiritual. Then he is establishing the nature of the soul. The nature of the soul, it's never born. It's the body that is born. When the soul accepts a new body, that is called birth. When the soul leaves the old body, that's called death. And the tenure of the soul within the body from the point of birth to death is called life. So it's the presence of the soul that makes the body alive. Right? So, the knowledge practically is starting from that. And the nature of the soul can never be cut by any weapon. Soul can never be burned by fire. It cannot be drowned in water. It cannot be withered by air. So the soul, that is the nature of the soul. Soul is eternal, immortal. And that soul is a part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. Who is the Supreme Soul? The consciousness is coming from the soul to the body. And the ultimate consciousness to all the souls are coming from the Supreme Soul, Lord Himself. So, this is one branch, like as you were saying. Bhagavad Gita is one of the essence of the Vedic wisdom. And the other, in the line of Puranas, it is Srimad Bhagavatam. So these are the two main scriptures that, if you ask, that we follow. No, there's some more questions. So, yeah, give him the mic, please. He has a...
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I've heard your versions before, and for the first time I've heard you face to face. It's been an honor. I've got one question, three questions really, which are related to the first question. Two questions related to the first one. The first one, you've said that this body is meant to suffer. And I've read Srila Prabhupada's books, some of them, and it's been described that we dropped to this prison, this material world, to suffer. And also in the scriptures it's explained that Krishna has given us independence, and we have misused this independence in some way, that we have dropped to this material world to suffer. I want to ask you that how, as living souls, do we drop? How do we get so attracted?
Yeah, thank you. As you yourself said, that the living entities have been endowed with some independence. Since we are minute, our independence also is minute. And this independence is actually the liberty to decide for ourselves what we want. And that's mainly because, you see, the relationship that we have with the Lord is a loving relationship. And love cannot be forced. We cannot force anyone to love us. It has to be out of our own volition. So because He wants us to love Him, He has given us the independence. You decide whether you're going to love me or not. Whether you want to accept me or not. And if we say that, well, we don't want to love you, rather, we want to be like you, who wants to be loved by everyone else. Right? And that is why He places us in this situation where our desires can be fulfilled. Like, we wanted to be independent, and He said, okay, go. And here, aren't we constantly trying to be independent? But the problem is, the more we try to become independent, the more we end up suffering. So that is the way to rectify us. This can be seen as a prison house. This can also be seen as a reform house or a hospital. We are getting cured. And the factor for becoming cured is to give up this tendency to be independent. Recognizing the fact that more we try to become independent, more we try to enjoy ourselves separately from the Lord, the more we end up suffering. So this is how we learn eventually that this is what we shouldn't do. Right? Now, we can also consider another analogy. This is also Prabhupada has given us. That a child tells the father, "Daddy, Daddy, I want to go and play with my friends in the park." So the father says, "Okay, come, I'll take you." So father takes the child to the park. There he meets his friends, and he is lost in his games with his friends, completely forgetting his father. But although the child has forgotten the father didn't forget the child. He sits on a bench by the side of the park, watching the child. Then it becomes dark. All the friends left. Then the child calls out, "Daddy, Daddy, where are you?" And the father says, "Okay, come, let's go home." So that is another way of looking at our situation in relation to the Lord. We wanted to play. And he said, "Okay, fine." And like a loving father, he's allowing us to fulfill our desire. But in that game that we are playing, it's a very simple game. When you win, we are happy. When you lose, we are sad. Right? And then eventually when we are completely exasperated and then call out, "Daddy, Daddy, where are you?" Then he comes and picks us up. So all it needs is to surrender to him and tell him that, "Please free us from this miserable condition and take me back to your home."
So if you could please give a big round of applause to His Holiness.
It was a wonderful experience to be with all of you. Thank you so much. And Vijay, thank you so much for making this arrangement and giving us this opportunity.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.